One of the quarterbacks I was really impressed with as I went through his preseason film was Justin Fields from the Chicago Bears. He was a quarterback that I really liked coming out of Ohio State, and I was really upset my own team, the Washington Commanders, didn't attempt to draft him last season. What impressed me was that even when Fields made mistakes, and I'll show you one shortly, he seemed to work on that very issue and fix it the following week. Beyond this, there was something else that really excited me. Something else that made me super happy for Bears fans, and it made me very optimistic for his 2022 season. Before we talk about that though, if you can do me a huge favor and like and subscribe to my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. So anyways, I mentioned that Justin Fields made some mistakes in one of his first games. One of them happened on his first drive against the Seattle Seahawks. This was on the 3rd and 3. The Bears were lining up in shotgun and they motioned Darnell Mooney back and forth behind the line of scrimmage. Since the Seahawks didn't react in terms of a man trailing, it's a good sign they're playing zone coverage. Meanwhile, Seattle's defense has two safeties on the field, but the one on the bottom of the screen was starting to walk closer to the line of scrimmage. Again, this is a good sign the Seahawks are in zone coverage with a single high safety. This means they are likely playing some sort of cover 3 defense. Instead of playing your typical 3 deep, 4 under defense, they blitzed their cornerback off the edge and ended up playing a cover 3 zone dog defense, meaning it's a 3 deep, 3 under shell. What I hate about this play is that it's 3rd and 3, so all Fields needs to do is make a quick first down throw. His goal is to focus on the right side and look for the matchup against the linebacker level and see who's likely to get open. With 48 playing as the hook roll defender, his hips are the ones we should be watching. He jumped on the underneath hitch route while Velus Jones was attacking the middle of the defense on his slant. Knowing this play design, Fields should have anticipated that Jones was getting open over the middle of the defense. Remember, all we need is 3 yards. Basically, the moment that Jones crossed the right hash marks, that's when the ball should have been thrown. This is a first down if Fields didn't attempt to play hero ball and attempt to scramble to pick up the first down on his own. I really didn't like how he reacted. Now, as a young quarterback, I don't like beating up a guy too badly for a play like this. When you go from playing with an incredibly talented offense at Ohio State to going to the Chicago Bears, who had horrible problems with their offensive line last season, it's not honestly shocking that Fields would want to take the ball himself. You're basically trying to unlearn bad habits you get from being on a bad team. What I really like though is that a lot of these issues seemed to go away the following week against the Browns. He seemed much more confident in the face of danger, and he seemed to react better on 3rd downs. For example, he only seemed to run when all of his reads were covered and when it was clear and obvious. Other than that, he seemed to do a great job of staying in the structure of his scheme and then making plays outside of that when needed. Before we look at an example, I want to give a huge shout out to HelloFresh for sponsoring this week's video. HelloFresh is here to make eating better and easier. No grocery stores, no stressful meal planning, just everything to prepare a wholesome, delicious meal all delivered to your door. This week, my wife had tried the grilled onion cheeseburgers. This is one of their Hall of Fame recipes. It was so incredibly tasty. The produce was fresh, everything was delicious, and the food was portioned perfectly for both to share. These recipes have step-by-step instructions that make them foolproof and make cooking simple and fun. Now, not only was everything delicious, but HelloFresh helps you reach your goals. They offer vegetarian, pescatarian, and fit and wholesome options that make it easy to stick to your plan. With these options, you can feel good about your choices without sacrificing any flavor. If you go to HelloFresh.com and use my code SAMGOLD16, you can get 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 gifts. Again, go to HelloFresh.com and use my code SAMGOLD16 to get 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 gifts. Now back to the breakdown, here's an example from the Browns game in the second quarter that I really liked. It was a basic quick game concept called stick, where Fields would read the underneath defender to know where to throw. Instead of forcing a pass to the flat receiver, he did a great job of collecting himself and throwing a nice little lob over the top in order to fit this pass. Now there is an argument that he should have thrown a quick pass to his tight end on the stick, but I'm not going to blame him for knowing he can place this ball, especially with the cornerback playing the route so deep. This is just a really good use of his accuracy. Now, at the start of this video, I mentioned something that I noticed that makes me really excited for his 22 season. We talked about improvements, but the thing that makes me even more excited is the play calling. Going from a Matt Nagy offense to Matt Eberflus run team is already starting to pay dividends. And again, this is obviously still preseason, but how the new coaching staff used Justin Fields on play action is something that makes me hopeful. For example, when you go back to his 2021 season, the Bears only ran play action on 23% of his play calls. So far in the preseason, that number has already gone up to over 30. If you remember from my scouting report on Justin Fields when he was coming out of college, I mentioned how good he was running these plays. What's interesting is that Fields was one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL on play action last year. But for some reason, the Bears refused to call these plays. Check out his 2021 big-time throw rate as compared to his turnover-worthy plays. Justin Fields is way up at the top. While this is a small sample size with only about 80 or so dropbacks, Fields created a big play on 12% of his attempts. Meanwhile, he only made a bad throw that led to a turnover-worthy play on just 1% of his passes. That ratio of 12-1 is absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, there are some small sample size issues here in the data, and I'd fully expect this ratio to come down with more attempts. But the clear and the number one takeaway that I want you to see is that Matt Nagy should have called these plays more often. He should have seen this, and he should have known that play action was the key to creating plays in his offense. In my opinion, only calling on 23% of your dropbacks for a quarterback like Justin Fields is criminal. So to already see it going up from 23 to 30, and again, yes, it's the preseason, this is still a positive. Let's look at a play against the Browns. This happened at the end of the first quarter. The Bears ran a 3-man concept featuring a deep play action drop. Fields will read the play from the middle stop, then he'll work his way to the outside stop, and then to end the design, he'll throw to the check down if none of these deep routes are open. After the snap, Fields correctly reads the safeties to see if they're keeping their one high look that they showed before the play began. Since the Browns continue this coverage post-snap, Fields sees the linebacker dropping over the middle of the defense. He knows that his first read is covered. He then moves on to his number 2. When it comes to the number 2, your goal is for the deep right cornerback to be in an out-leverage position while the underneath defender will be driving on the check down. That's the hole that Fields is looking for. That's also what happened on this play. I want you to watch the anticipation of Fields' pass. Fields threw it perfectly in rhythm. He's already in the process of throwing it before the receiver even began breaking on his route. His pass is perfectly placed at chest height, and his receiver was able to pick up 18 yards on the throw. While obviously not every single play action concept went this smoothly or netted this many yards, the key point is that a deep drop where Fields can step up in the pocket while using the play action fake to shut down the pass rush, this can be a huge game changer for this offense. Teams like the Bills and the Ravens and the Cardinals, they all routinely run play action on more than 30% of their passes. The Dolphins with Tua last season ran it on a whopping 42% of the time. Tua was great on these play designs, and it helped him cover up some of the weaker portions of his game. In my opinion, the Bears have to be up at this level. Maybe not at 40%, but if they're consistently in the 30s, that's all I'm asking. Last season, 23% was bottom 10 in the league. With a guy like Justin Fields, while producing as well as he did on creating these big plays, there's no reason not to call it all the time. Hopefully this preseason play calling at greater than 30% of play action is not an aberration. However, I'm going to guess that this trend of using more play action will continue into the regular season. It makes too much sense for them not to. This play calling, along with Justin Fields' improvements and his willingness to learn, they both make me very optimistic for his 22 campaign. Well, that's all I have for you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. The season is about to start, so I'll have another video out from the opening game from the Bills and the Rams. Keep an eye out for that. Thanks again for watching. You can support the channel through my Patreon below, and you can also find me on Twitter at Samuel R. Gold.